It's been a year since the release of Marvel's Spider-Man on PS4, and my anticipation for the obvious sequel is only increasing. With next-gen consoles almost literally around the corner, an announcement for the game hopefully shouldn't be too far off. I dug in tons of hours into Spider-Man, and a lot of them were just swinging around New York. I also recently completed the game on New Game Plus, and the story is still just as good as the first time I played it. However, the game isn't perfect, but that's why a sequel could easily fix some of the problems. So in this video, I'll go over some of the stuff I would like to see and where I believe improvements can be made. Now let's start off with what I believe is the most important part of an open world Spider-Man game, and that's how you get around the city. I'd say Insomniac did a great job with the web swinging. However, it took me a little longer than expected to reach that opinion. I was still torn a little bit with the current game and Spider-Man 2 back on the PS2. I felt something was missing a little bit, and what I think that was complete freedom. Marvel's Spider-Man feels a bit more restricted, kind of like a hybrid of Spider-Man 2 and the Amazing Spider-Man 2 mixed together, and hopefully that's the only time I ever have to mention Amazing Spider-Man 2 in this video, because man, that game sucked. So what do I mean by a bit more restricted? Well, I feel like I don't have complete control over my swings. It feels as if my hand is being held just a little bit, but it's just the right amount for me to be able to still have a blast swinging. One of the ways I feel this could be fixed is allowing the player to be in complete control of their swings. For example, I would really like to be able to do loops. I think that would be a cool way of gaining some momentum. And please don't let this be something that you trigger where you automatically go into a loop. No, let us be able to actually have momentum to get into the loop. Just saying. Now look, don't get me wrong. I freaking love Marvel's Spider-Man's web swing. Heck, it's actually the one I prefer, believe it or not. Because it's the one that makes me feel more like Spider-Man doing all these cool swings and tricks and stuff like that. I just feel they should borrow some more elements from Spider-Man 2 to make it even better. One of the really cool things about Spider-Man 2 that has really never been implemented in any future Spider-Man games is the ability to shoot out two web lines. Not only could you shoot out two webs, but you could use them to slingshot yourself or make quick, sharp turns. So I would really like to see you to be able to shoot out two web lines to do all the things that I just mentioned, but even more stylistic. Kind of like the web swinging we saw in the beginning of the Amazing Spider-Man 2 movie. Another thing I would like to see improved in the web swinging is to have proper web swing arches. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's say you're diving towards the street and you web swing at the last second. In Marvel's Spider-Man, some mysterious force just pulls you up and prevents you from hitting the ground. This also occurs if you just miss the edge of a building. Now, in other Spider-Man games, if you shot out a web too late, you would hit the ground. Granted, you wouldn't get hurt, you'd just, hit the ground. I would like to go back to the old days where it actually mattered when you shot out a web. I feel this would give the player more of a sense of adrenaline as they shoot out a web line at the last second and just barely miss the ground. I can, however, see why this was added, because I won't lie, it was pretty annoying in previous games when you shot out a web a little too late or at a decent time and you just hit the ground. Maybe at the very least keep this hand-holding feature, but just make it a little less forgiving. Also, while I won't lose sleep over this if it doesn't get added in, I would like to see this feature make a return, and that's falling damage. And no, I don't want to just do this so I can go to the top of the Empire State Building and jump off and die, which I will do, but it would add so much more tension to jumping off high buildings. I understand this mechanic annoys some people, so maybe we could just have an option that lets you turn off fall damage. That way, everybody's happy. But once again, I won't lose sleep over it if it doesn't happen. It's just something I would like to see make a comeback. There's just two more things I want to see implemented in the traversal mechanics. It's the wingsuit that we've seen in the MCU Spider-Man movies and improved wall crawling. Now, if I were to implement the wingsuit, I would have it triggered by first going into a dive by pressing L3 and then pressing L3 again to activate the wingsuit. Or, if you want to activate the wingsuit a lot quicker, just double tap the L3 button while you're in the air and boom, you're gliding. And I have a funny feeling we could see this in the sequel. Not because it would be a cool gameplay mechanic, but the wingsuit is actually referenced in the game with one of Peter Parker's lost book bags. Now, as for wall crawling when it comes to traversing in the open world, there needs to be a mechanic where you can crawl faster, and that's all I really need to say on that. So I hope in the sequel we get more freedom, but yet still have some consequences for not swinging correctly. I don't want to feel some invisible force holding my hand at times. I want to feel like a true master of web swinging with actual risk being involved. The next topic I want to move on to is the world itself, New York City. Insomniac Games did a great job with their open world. It felt alive, its citizens would react to you whether you were swinging by them, dropping on the ground and scaring them, or them wanting to give you a high five. I do have a few things I would like to add on to this though. I want the citizens to be a little more dynamic. Most of the citizens seem to react the same way whenever I land on the ground by falling over. I think there should be a little bit more variety. One thing that would be cool is if citizens got in arguments while they see you, like one guy compliments you saying, "Yeah, Spider-Man, you rock," and then the other guy's like, "No, he's a menace, he's dangerous." And then you have the option to go in there and interact with the two and say, hey, break it up, no fighting here. I think that would be a pretty cool feature. Or how about if a citizen asks you to shoot a web like they do in Marvel's Spider-Man, and they actually react to you doing that? Oh, and just one little thing. Can we please just walk around the city as Peter Parker? And no, don't make that a suit skin. Let us be able to actually soak in the city more, but just walking around and people not knowing who I am. And if we gotta change as Spider-Man because a random crime shows up, we can just find a place to hide and quickly change as Spidey. I know it sounds like a complicated thing to add, but it's something I've always wanted to see. Also, while not a requirement, I would like to see if they could make the city bigger. Now, I know bigger doesn't mean better, but it would be nice to have some new areas to explore. Also, no excuses this time. There needs to be a day and night cycle. Practically every open world game has one. Why it wasn't in this game still baffles me. And on a quick side note, can we please get the actual Freedom Tower instead of whatever that is in Lower Manhattan? Now, I think I heard this might have been because of a licensing issue, but try to work some things out, Insomniac, because I really want to go on top of the Freedom Tower. So, let's get it in the next game, okay? One more thing I want to see in the city is more bridges. This would be absolutely perfect for the traversal mechanics Spider-Man PS4 already has, like zipping through pipes. Just imagine how cool it would look if you did that with bridges. Anyways, hopefully we get a bigger city and more importantly, more interactions with the citizens. Now, if you're going to be exploring an open world, you need to have a lot to do, which Marvel's Spider-Man definitely had, but I have to be honest, it was pretty bare bones and cliched compared to other open world games. For example, the whole unlocking towers to show more of the map is a trend that just needs to die. People are tired of it. While I do like the tiny little approach they took with it, making it a mini game, it still needs to go away. However, the collectibles can definitely stay, but I do think they shouldn't be all displayed on the map. It takes away any real challenge for when you find them. Maybe instead of giving out the exact location, give out the vicinity and you guys search around that particular area to find it. Also, be sure to keep that beeping sound that's already in the game to make finding those items not too frustrating. Before I move on, I just wanted to add one small thing. While I love the music that plays while you swing through the city, I have to admit it does get a bit annoying at times. I hate to have to go to the menu and turn the music off if I just want to have a nice quiet swing. So how about we just have the music play randomly at times? One thing I noticed was missing though, and it literally took me now to realize, why weren't there any race courses in Marvel's Spider-Man? Almost every open world Spider-Man game I can think of had them. Now personally, I'm not really into these, but these could be really fun for trophy hunting, and that's something I love doing. But now let's move to what I think was Marvel's Spider-Man's biggest problem, and that's the random crimes. After you complete all the story-based random crimes throughout the city, The regular random crimes become so painfully repetitive to the point I'm actually hesitant to do ones like kidnappings, hit and runs, and sometimes car crashes. They have practically almost no variety in them. These random crimes should be bigger and more unpredictable. Some that I would like to see are bank robberies that require stealth or just going in willy-nilly. Or how about stuff that aren't crimes, like citizens crying out for help if they got injured or about to fall off a construction crane. This is stuff that Spider-Man 2 had, and I think it would add a ton of variety. After all, a typical day for Spider-Man isn't just stopping bad guys, it's helping people from other dangers as well. And can we also not have every random crime be a whole group of baddies? How about just one thug who's trying to steal a woman's purse, or one or two guys mugging somebody? It'll make those big group encounters much more special. Now let's talk about the last part regarding gameplay, and that's trophies. Spider-Man PS4 had one of the more easier platinum trophies I've obtained. While I don't have a lot of platinum trophies, I feel Spider-Man should have been a little more difficult. So in the sequel, I believe we should have trophies that are earned by getting gold medals on challenges, and like what I mentioned, should be added in earlier, races. Regarding the story of Marvel's Spider-Man 2, I honestly don't have that many ideas of what could improve, mainly because the story of Marvel's Spider-Man was just so good. If I had to say anything, is I hope they continue to expand on things like Miles Morales becoming Spider-Man, Harry's storyline, what Norman Osborn is up to since he resigned as mayor, and Peter and Mary Jane's relationship. Also, a quick side note regarding cutscenes. Can we make sure that it's all real time this time? Like, no segues when we go into buildings or anything. Make sure it's all completely real time. And I don't think that should be too much of a problem given that the PS5 is pretty much going to be a beast of a machine. And on a final note, although it isn't extremely story related, this can definitely say something about the story, and that's the title and box art. Both of these need to be drastically improved. Marvel's Spider-Man is just an incredibly lazy title, and the box art only makes it worse. So please, give us a unique name for the sequel. Don't just call it Marvel's Spider-Man 2. Give it a unique title, like what Rocksteady did with their Batman Arkham games. And make sure the box art is something appealing. Don't just rip a render of Spider-Man and slap it on a red background. Well, that's pretty much all the things I want to see in Marvel's Spider-Man 2. And yes, this video was filled with a lot of criticism of Marvel's Spider-Man, but it's all to help Insomniac create an even greater game. Marvel's Spider-Man is still one of my favorite games of all time, and easily my favorite Spidey game. I can't imagine what the sequel will be like on new and more powerful hardware. And now that Sony owns Insomniac, they'll be able to get a lot more funding and support for the game to make it even better. So guys, I want to know what your thoughts are on all the things I just went over, and I would also love to hear what stuff you would like to see in the sequel. Let me know in those comments below. Until next time guys, Excelsior!